Hey guys! Tonight we travel far from the usual stone castles and smoky taverns of Europe. Instead, you find yourself barefoot on an ochre-colored path winding through the dry highlands of medieval Ethiopia. The sun has barely risen, but the scent of wood smoke and cow dung is already thick in the air. You clutch a worn gourd of water as the sound of lowing cattle grows louder, and so does the argument coming from a ring of men under a crooked sycamore tree. This isn't some royal court with golden goblets and powdered wigs. This is a cattle dispute tribunal, and you somehow have been roped into witnessing what might be the sleepiest lawsuit in recorded history. The stakes: one confused cow, a bruised ego, and maybe a handful of roasted barley at lunch. You probably won't survive this without drifting off. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always read those with a sleepy smile. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The path is cracked but familiar beneath your toes. There are no signs, no gates, no guards, just the rustle of eucalyptus leaves and the distant jingling of cowbells. You pass a boy prodding a goat with a stick twice his size. The goat, as goats tend to do, ignores all human instruction and munches on someone's laundry. The boy shrugs, life moves on. Your destination is marked not by any monument but by the presence of people. A half-circle of elders sits beneath the shade of a sycamore tree, its bark streaked with lichen. The ground is swept, if such a thing can be said about a patch of dry earth. There's an order to it, though no one would call it organized. People know where to sit, how far to stand, when to look serious, and when to pretend they're not listening while absolutely eavesdropping. You're early, but so is everyone else. Time here bends gently like an acacia branch in the wind. The elders lean on prayer sticks wrapped in thin strips of leather. They speak in low tones, their voices like warm porridge, thick, unhurried, and full of quiet wisdom. Some hold thin parchment scrolls that haven't been opened in years. One elder squints suspiciously at a chicken as if it were a witness with something to hide. This is a Koidagna tribunal, a traditional rural court. It's been here for centuries, though historians still argue whether these exact gatherings date to the 14th or 15th century. What they agree on is that long before centralized monarchy ruled Ethiopia with imperial courts, these grassroots assemblies handled everything from stolen oxen to marriages gone slightly sour. Each dispute follows ritual. Every decision is part justice, part performance, and mostly patience. Today's drama. A cow? Of course it's a cow. A brown one with uneven horns and a look in her eye, like she knows she's at the center of something very stupid. She belongs to one man, or the other, or neither. It depends who you ask, and you will be asked eventually. You nod respectfully as you approach. No shoes, no weapons, no loud voices. That's the rule. You're offering a small bundle of fresh grasses discreetly dropped by the elder's feet. It's not payment, it's tradition. Possibly both. A sleepy rooster crows somewhere behind the thorny fence. Nobody acknowledges it. That bird lies every morning. Someone sneezes. A baby cries. A woman with a large clay jug walks past without glancing at the gathering. That's also tradition. Disputes are for men and stories, and women pretend not to care while knowing everything. The accuser arrives with dramatic flair. He stomps into the circle with exaggerated exhaustion, slapping dust off his legs like he's just hiked across kingdoms. You know he lives one hut over. He carries a stick with a carved tip, some kind of status symbol, though it looks suspiciously like the stick every other man here owns. Then comes the defendant, who arrives slowly on purpose. He says nothing. That too is a tactic. Speak last, let the other guy's words crumble under their own weight. Or at least that's the theory. They greet each other with rigid politeness. They touch foreheads briefly, not because they like each other, but because not doing so would mean the court session stops until someone apologizes. You'd think that would save time. It doesn't. And then everyone waits. The cow flicks her tail. A small fly spirals past her ear in search of meaning. And the tribunal is about to begin, though no one would say it out loud. That would be far too abrupt. The court doesn't begin with a bang. It doesn't even begin with a whisper. It begins with a subtle shifting of weight, a collective inhalation, and one elder adjusting the folds of his robe as if preparing for an entirely different event like an early morning nap. You glance around. The judges, or Shimagilewatch, are elderly men chosen for their wisdom, their ability to stay awake through long speeches, and their legendary capacity to drink coffee without twitching. Each wears a shama, a light cotton cloth wrapped around the shoulders, often white but stained slightly from years of used smoke and who knows what else. Their feet are calloused. Their expressions are unreadable. Their beards, if present, are not so much grown as tolerated. These are men who have seen wars, droughts, weddings, and that one market fire started by fermented honey wine and poor judgment. They nod slowly in sync as if to confirm that yes, they have seen everything, and yes, they will still take 4 hours to decide whose cow is whose. Before anyone speaks, a smaller boy approaches with a metal tray balancing tiny ceramic cups, a battered kettle, and a bowl of frankincense. Welcome to the first ritual of the morning coffee as legal lubricant. You sit as a dozen hands reach out for tiny black cups, each filled with the first Jabina pour, strong, gritty, and somehow hotter than the sun. You don't ask how they brewed it so fast. You don't ask how the kettle stays upright. You just accept that coffee here is half divine, half necessity, and fully immune to laws of time and temperature. The disputants sip with exaggerated calm. It's a standoff, but with caffeine and polite nods. You sip too. It tastes like burnt citrus and earth. Not great, not bad. Kind of like justice. The elder who seems to be presiding mostly because he has the biggest stick clears his throat. It's not a signal. It's just a throat clearing. But everyone waits anyway. Maybe this will be the moment. It's not. Instead, another elder begins humming a tune. Is it a blessing? A folk song? The theme to some long-forgotten cow soap opera. Historians still argue whether these chants are literal invocations or just a way to get everyone to stop fidgeting. Finally, the accuser rises. He does not launch into accusation. He begins as custom dictates by praising the elders, all of them, individually, by name, with descriptions of their intelligence, their past verdicts, and at one point, their ability to predict weather using goat knees. Then he praises the defendant. Sort of. He compliments his farm, his late uncle, his ancestors, then casually implies they'd all be ashamed of his current actions. The crowd murmurs in satisfaction. That's the right balance. Compliment the bloodline, slap the present. And then the meat of the claim, this cow, this very cow, the one before you now, was born of my bull, fed by my hands and taken by his deceit. Everyone looks at the cow blinks. The defendant does not respond. Instead, the presiding elder grunts and gestures for the rebuttal scheduled only after a long, deliberate silence. The kind of silence that gives time for the ancestors to tune in. Or maybe just so people can finish their coffee. The defendant stands. He smiles. A full, confident, possibly too smug smile. His opening words, "May the soil of your judgment be soft under your feet." It's a legal flourish. He's good at this. His defense. He claims the cow wandered onto his land of her own will, and that a cow cannot be stolen if she does not wish to leave. Yes, you heard that right. Cow agency is on the table. He describes the cow's loyalty, her behavior, her refusal to eat when tethered to the accuser's barn. She has chosen me, he says. Would you return a wife to a man she does not love? Gasps, chuckles. One elder spits out his coffee. This argument, bizarre as it sounds, is not without precedent. In some rural oral law traditions, animals, especially oxen and cows, were believed to carry a sense of belonging. There's even an old tale about a mule who walked 40 kilometers to return to a former owner, which is now cited in way too many unrelated cases. A rooster crows, again, still lying. The elder judges lean in. One scribbles something on a piece of bark. Another squints at the cow. The cow looks away. She is clearly over this. And as the sun begins to climb and the coffee tray makes another round, you realize that while nothing definitive has happened, everything is now in motion. The drama is unfolding slowly, deliberately. There are no gavels, no court reporters, just eyes, memories, and a growing sense that things are about to get slightly weirder before they get resolved. Which, let's be honest, is exactly how these mornings usually go. Now that the air is thick with caffeine, mild suspicion, and the faint aroma of goat sweat, it's time for the formal beginning of the dispute ritual. Yes, somehow, that was just the warm-up. You shift slightly on your woven grass mat, as the presiding elder, who again may have the largest stick, or perhaps just the best beard, makes a circular motion with his hand. This means the actual complaints may now begin. But first, another ritual, the shared insult wrapped in politeness. You've never heard men yell so gently in your life. One moment, the accuser is referring to the defendant as the one whose harvest once fed my family, and the next he's accusing him of swallowing cows like shadows steal warmth, which is a poetic way of calling someone a thief with no soul. The defendant responds in kind. "I will not call him a liar, for even lies deserve elegance," he says, which is perhaps the classiest burn you've ever witnessed. Everyone nods appreciatively. These aren't just insults, they're formalized tension. It's how you scream in a society that forbids yelling. The tone is respectful. The message, anything but. Think of it as courtroom roasting, but with metaphors, livestock, and the risk of accidentally complimenting your enemy's dead grandmother. This form of indirect insult is called wax and gold speech. What you say on the surface, the wax is not what you really mean, the gold. It's an ancient Ethiopian tradition still used in sermons, poetry, and of course cattle courts. Historians still debate whether its origins lie in religious doublespeak or if it's just humanity's earliest form of passive aggression. You lean back a little, half amused, half mesmerized. The structure is clear. Every complaint must have a blessing to the elders, an indirect accusation, at least one agricultural metaphor, a compliment so backhanded it might be illegal in another country. The defendant begins pacing, slowly, measured. He places his hand on the cow's back and declares, "She chose me. She followed me. She gave milk under my roof. That is not theft, it is divine redirection." Some elders nod as if he's quoting scripture. One elderly woman, clearly eavesdropping from behind a reed fence, scoffs audibly. The accuser stands again, his voice growing firmer. "Then let her speak for herself," he says, gesturing toward the cow. It's at this point you remember no one is joking. This is serious, because livestock here is more than livelihood. A single cow can mean dowry, school fees, status, or survival. Entire families hinge on the ownership of a single hide and heartbeat. The dispute is both personal and deeply practical. That said, the cow remains impressively indifferent. A fly lands on her ear. She flicks it off like a queen dismissing a subject. And so it's decided if the cow cannot speak, then those who've heard her will. Cue the arrival of the village's most powerful witnesses, the neighbors. These aren't just any neighbors. These are the unofficial historians of rural life who saw you when you dropped your teff porridge, who heard your baby cry, offbeat, who absolutely remember that time you borrowed firewood and didn't return it. They form a loose semicircle around the court, mumbling and shifting, pretending they don't enjoy this. But oh, they do. First up, an elder from the southern plot known for his forgetfulness and love of exaggeration. "I saw the cow 3 moons ago," he begins, "and I heard her moo in a tone of deep longing. Nobody knows what this means, but it sounds legitimate." Someone claps once. Then comes the woman who lives next to the communal well. "She often came to drink from our trough," she says. But when this man, she nods toward the accuser, called her, she walked away. Gasps. Drama. A cow with an attitude. Then comes the wild card witness, a child. About 8 years old, barefoot, serious as a monk. "I named her Didi," the child says. "You name the cow?" the elder asks. Yes, the child says, she liked me. You blink. This is now a custody battle with naming rights. The elders lean in again. Is a named cow more loyal? Is this relevant? Historians still argue how much emotional bonding factored into rural rulings. But one thing's for sure, this tribunal just got more complicated. Also, the kid's adorable. That may or may not influence the verdict. You sip another round of coffee, your third probably. Time flows oddly here. No one's in a rush, and yet everything feels like it's building towards something. A verdict. A brawl. A surprise twist where the cow turns out to be pregnant with disputed calves. It could be anything. But for now, the yelling continues, always respectful, always simmering, never quite boiling over. And you begin to realize this whole process isn't just about who gets the cow. It's about how a community stays intact despite the cow. You wake from a brief, accidental blink to the sound of a throat being cleared with theatrical precision. The kind of throat clear that says, I am about to speak for a long time, and you better pretend to care. It's a new voice now. Not the accuser, not the defendant. A third man rises, a neighbor, yes, but also something more. The way he adjusts his sash, the subtle tap of his staff against the ground, and the dramatic pause before opening his mouth all scream, local mediator energy. He's not officially a judge, but he might as well be. He has that look of someone who once solved a land feud using only a proverb and a basket of dried lentils. He begins with a long-winded blessing for rain as is customary. Then with a sigh, he offers his suggestion perhaps the cow can stay with him for 3 days, during which she will be free to roam, and whichever man she returns to is her rightful owner. You think he's joking? He is not. This is a real proposal, one that has historical grounding. In some regions of medieval Ethiopia, particularly in the highland zones of Shewa and Tigray, animal loyalty trials weren't unheard of, particularly when branding marks faded or owners made conflicting claims. Let the animal choose. A four-legged Solomon scenario. The crowd murmurs. The judges stroke their chins. And the cow? She lays down in the dust as if to say, I will not be performing today. Thank you. But the idea sparks debate. The accuser shakes his head. He insists that the cow's affections have been manipulated, fed with stolen grain, pampered with stolen salt. He even suggests that herbs might have been rubbed on her snout to confuse her senses. You didn't know bovine nose fraud was a thing, but apparently it is. The defendant laughs too loud. The kind of laugh that says, I definitely did something suspicious, but good luck proving it. The judges say nothing, which means everything. And now comes another sacred part of the process, the branding inspection. A boy is summoned, carrying a folded goatskin satchel. Inside, a handful of charcoal, a sliver of beeswax, and an iron rod. No longer hot, but once used to sear identification marks onto cattle flanks. 2 elders kneel beside the cow. She remains impressively unbothered. They search through her fur for marks, old burns, raised letters, faded scars. One even pulls out a curved piece of copper to trace the outline of a semicircle hidden under her left haunch. It could be a G, one whispers. It could be a C, says another. It could be dirt, someone else adds helpfully. Historians still argue whether standardized cattle branding existed in this exact period. Some claim glyphs were universal. Others say they were family-specific and often confusingly similar, probably on purpose. You know, like how everyone's Wi-Fi network is named Netgear78 just to mess with each other. The branding results are predictably inconclusive. The defendant insists the faint mark is his family's sun circle. The accuser argues it's clearly a stylized grain motif. You look again. It looks like a potato. The elder with the best eyesight, ironically almost blind, squints one final time and mutters, the cow is not telling us her secrets. And now the insults escalate. Still no shouting, but the metaphors grow sharper. One man accuses the other of having a tongue wrapped in banana leaves, sweet, soft, and full of rot. Another replies that his rival knows truth only as a hyena knows prayer with hunger, not reverence. A goat sneezes, no one blinks. As tension rises, the judges call for a pause, a structured recess, if you will. But here it's not called that, it's just, let us chew the leaves. You follow the crowd to a low stone bench beneath a fig tree. A woven basket makes its way around, filled with slightly wilted sprigs of chat, a mildly stimulating leaf chewed in social and judicial gatherings. You're handed a handful and warned, don't swallow the stems unless you want to remember your grandmother's name backwards. You chew, it's bitter, kind of grassy, not unpleasant, and definitely something you weren't expecting in the middle of legal proceedings. The mood softens. Arguments drift into gossip. Someone mentions a chicken that laid a square egg. Another swears the market vendor has been mixing lentils with pebbles again. The accuser and defendant sit a few feet apart, pretending not to listen, but clearly listening. And through it all, the cow naps. Occasionally, she twitches an ear or adjusts her leg. She is now the most powerful, most uninterested creature in this whole event. You begin to feel it now. The slow unraveling of energy, not from exhaustion, but from process. The kind of fatigue that comes from too much ritual and not enough resolution. But resolution is coming. You just don't know whose side time is on. You return to the sycamore shade jaw, slightly sore from chewing. Chat heart mildly racing from caffeine and anticipation. The afternoon heat is settling in. It curls around your ankles and lifts the edge of your tunic like a lazy breeze trying to steal secrets. The cow rises. Finally, she stretches, then relieves herself right in front of the elder's mat. This apparently is a sign. One of the judges immediately mutters, "She honors the soil of justice." Another says she mocks us with her timing. A third just says, "Move the mat." There's no official interpretation. Historians still argue whether bodily functions were ever viewed as omens in medieval Ethiopian courts, or if that's just something humans do when out of ideas and deep into a fifth hour of livestock litigation. With all witnesses heard and branding debates unresolved, the court now shifts to something surprisingly investigative. Evidence inspection. Yes, actual physical clues. You didn't expect this, did you? The accuser insists the cow's original tethering rope made of plaited bark is still tied to a tree behind his hut. He even claims the knot pattern is unique to his family line, passed down through generations like a beloved stew recipe. The judges nod. Rope lineage is no laughing matter. A junior court boy is dispatched to retrieve it. He runs barefoot with an enthusiasm that suggests he's just happy to leave the argument behind. You envy him. Meanwhile, the defendant pulls out a satchel. Inside, a small bundle of dried teff grains. He claims it's the exact mix he's been feeding the cow, proof of loyalty, he says. No beast would switch hands after tasting barley with frankincense dust, he adds confidently. This opens an entirely new front culinary loyalty. The crowd murmurs. Someone behind you mutters, "I'd switch for frankincense too." To your surprise, this is taken seriously. Taste memory in cattle isn't a proven science, but in this village, it's a debated art. One elder begins a rambling monologue about a goat he once raised that refused to eat anything unless it was sprinkled with ashes from a specific cooking fire. Another nods solemnly. That goat had standards. The rope finally arrives, paraded like a royal artifact. It's frayed a little moldy and frankly indistinguishable from every other rope you've seen tied to fences all day. Still, it's examined with exaggerated care. The elder turns it in his hands, sniffs it, even rubs it against his cheek. He pronounces it is bark. Everyone nods. Clearly, this is going nowhere. And so begins the hoofprint examination. Yes. You are now crawling through dirt shoulder to shoulder with two elders and a boy holding a crooked twig, trying to match the shape and depth of hoof marks with where the cow supposedly stood days ago. You are not a hoof expert. No one here is, but that won't stop the performance. The twig is used to circle imprints in the dust. Someone produces a flat board to calibrate the soil firmness. One elder even tries placing his hand in the print, muttering something about heel weight. He could be making it up. No one dares challenge him. There's a pause. And then, a revelation. The oldest judge, who's been silent all morning, leans forward and speaks in a voice so low it makes the wind pause. "Where were the dung piles?" he asks. Everyone freezes. See, this judge remembers something no one else did. Cows, being generous contributors to the landscape, tend to leave traces. And those traces follow patterns closeness to trees' direction of the sun slope of the ground. He motioned to a spot where the cow was found grazing. There under a bush are dried piles clearly from earlier this week. A boy is sent to compare dung textures. Yes, you have now entered the CSI cow stool portion of the trial. It's messy, it's weirdly specific, and to your horror, it's actually kinda compelling. The accuser beams. "She only eats from my northern pasture," he says. The high-fiber grass makes her dung firm. The defendant scoffs. "That's not fiber, that's dehydration." The judge lifts a single finger. Enough. The sky is beginning to tint with afternoon gold now. Shadows grow long and birds start muttering bedtime gossip in the trees. The court knows it must soon move toward a decision, but not yet. One final procedure remains the community voice circle. One by one, spectators are allowed to speak not as witnesses, but as people affected by the dispute. This is less about truth and more about impact. A young woman steps forward. "I fetch water near this man's house," she says, pointing to the accuser. When he is angry, even the dogs grow nervous. A murmured warning: character assassination is frowned upon unless it's poetic. A second woman counters, saying the defendant once oversalted porridge at a baptism and laughed. Again, not directly relevant, but noted. Even a teenage boy contributes. "I heard the cow fart in a way that echoed off my hut. Only my field creates echoes like that. That may be the strangest thing you've heard all day, but you're too tired to question it." The sun sinks a little lower. The court is heavy with dust opinions and more unresolved metaphors than anyone can count. And the she yawns. "Same honestly. The air is thick now, not just with dust and the last notes of a lazy afternoon sun, but with a palpable sense of something about to happen. The kind of tension you'd expect in a royal duel, except here, it's about manure consistency and unspoken grudges from a wedding 3 years ago. You shift slightly onto your mat, your legs are tingling. Or maybe your patience is. The cow flicks her tail like a bored queen swatting away petitioners. And still no verdict. Instead, the presiding elder lifts his hand and calls for the Dabtara. You've heard whispers. The Dabtara is not a priest. Not exactly. He's a religious scholar trained in Orthodox scripture, protective amulets, and enough folk ritual to make your Western brain twitch. He arrives slowly wrapped in a thick cloth despite the heat, eyes sharp under bushy brows. In one hand, a worn scroll, in the other, a bundle of dried herbs and horsehair, classic accessories for a man who might settle this not through law but through ancient text and possibly eyelash counting. Yes, eyelash counting. He approaches the cow, mutters a Ge'ez blessing, then pulls out a small brass mirror. He looks into it, then holds it toward the cow. She blinks. He nods solemnly. Someone in the crowd whispers, "She carries stubbornness in her left eye." The Dabtara then pulls a tiny carved stick from his robe, lifts the cow's head gently, and yes, he begins counting her eyelashes. You did not make this up. You are witnessing a legitimate dispute ritual where eyelash patterns are believed to reflect spiritual ownership. One side claims cows spiritually align with their caretaker. The other claims these rites are pure showmanship. Historians still argue whether this type of inspection was widespread or localized. Some suggest it was metaphorical. Others that it genuinely influenced rulings. You're too deep into it now to care. Honestly, it feels reasonable. Compared to dung forensics, downright clinical. The Dabtura finishes. His verdict, a riddle. Her shadow falls west, but her heart grazes east. What does that mean? No one asks. Everyone just nods thoughtfully. That's how you know he's respected. Then, He pulls from his satchel a folded prayer parchment with faint ink symbols. He lays it beside the cow's hoof and begins chanting soft, rhythmic, hypnotic. For a moment, the whole tribunal stills. The children quiet. The elders lean in. Even the goat who interrupted earlier seems to freeze mid-chew. This is no longer just a dispute. This is part spiritual alignment, part religious theater. And you, dear listener, are now neck-deep in a medieval court where the divine shares equal billing with the judicial. The chant ends. The parchment is rolled and handed to the lead judge, who tucks it into his sleeve like a secret he'll never read again. Now comes the turn of the defendant, who clearly feels the heat. He launches into a final, impassioned defense. He invokes the cow's behavior, how she slept near his hut, how she came to his children, how she licked salt from his hands. He gets teary-eyed at one point. The kind of tears that scream, "Look how innocent I am." One elder raises a skeptical brow as if to say, "Those are not cow-worthy tears." The accuser responds with an even more dramatic tale. He tells of the cow's mother long dead, how he midwifed her birth in a storm, wrapping her in banana leaves as lightning struck the river bend. He ends by pointing to the cow and whispering, "She bears my luck." It's an undeniably powerful line, possibly stolen from a folk song. Still, you get chills. The court seems moved. The judge stands. The other elders rise. It's happening. Finally. But first, a small boy interrupts with a fresh question. He asks the Dabtara if a cow's soul can transfer between owners if her dung remains on old soil. The question is both brilliant and confusing. The court pauses. The Dabtara smiles faintly, then replies, "Only if the rain has not spoken." What does that mean? No one knows. It's just one more puzzle in a day full of them. And now, almost miraculously, comes the final silence. It stretches long, warm, and wordless. The elders have stepped aside to deliberate. But really, they don't need to speak. Their verdict has already been formed in the spaces between insults, dung analysis, and spiritual riddles. You feel it. The crowd feels it. Even the cow seems to stand taller, as if she knows her fate is moments away from being spoken. But before the verdict is voiced, there's one final tradition to complete. The verdict: feather. A white guinea fowl feather tied with twine is brought forward. It's symbolic but essential. Whichever man it is handed to will be seen as the rightful keeper of the animal. The elder returns. The feather rests in his hand. The crowd leans forward. You hold your breath. The cow, of course, just blinks. And then quietly, almost lazily, the feather is handed. But no, not yet, because at that exact moment, the rogue goat returns. It charges into the tribunal like a tiny, dusty comet, knocks over a water jug, headbutts the coffee tray, screams. Everyone bursts into motion. The goat's timing impeccable. Because in a court of law that moves slower than erosion, even goats can delay destiny. The goat's interruption is swift, chaotic, and somehow completely routine. No one screams, no one panics. Several elders simply lift their robes as if this sort of barnyard disruption is scheduled into the day's agenda. The presiding judge sighs deeply. The goat circles, once snatches a half-eaten teff flatbread off someone's lap and trots off as if delivering a sermon. You half expect it to shout, "Court adjourned." People chuckle. The tension breaks like brittle papyrus. Even the cow looks amused, though that may just be indigestion. And now, finally, the focus returns to the old man with the guinea fowl feather. He clears his throat, loudly, one long scratchy ahem that echoes off a clay wall. The laughter stops. Dust settles. The goat is gone again, probably to cause trouble at a circumcision ceremony down the hill. All eyes are on the judge. He holds the feather aloft, then pauses again. Of course he does. You've learned by now nothing moves fast here except goats and gossip. The feather is lowered gently into the palm of the accuser. It's over. The cow is returned. A collective sigh releases from the crowd. Not disappointment, not celebration, but relief. The kind that comes after a long fast or an especially confusing wedding speech, finally landing its punchline. The accuser bows low, then awkwardly pets the cow, who responds by immediately relieving herself again. It's unclear whether this is gratitude or protest. The defendant accepts the loss with stoic grace. He mutters a blessing, then does the most unexpected thing imaginable. He removes his belt ties it into a knot and tosses it into the fire. This, you're told, is symbolic. A declaration that the argument is now ashes, that he won't bring it up again, not even in whispered slander or drunken metaphors. Of course, in reality, he'll definitely bring it up again. Probably at the next marriage feast, possibly with an embellished retelling where he let the cow go out of pity. But the belt gesture makes it official. The story now belongs to the village, not just the two men. As the sun begins to lower and the light turns syrupy gold, the elders begin to stand. Some stretch. Others reach for the coffee pot. A few just sit there blinking slowly like tortoises who've seen too much. But the ritual isn't over yet, because public shaming must still occur. No, not the cruel kind. This is more like an honorable humiliation. A gentle reminder to everyone: don't start cow fights unless you're prepared to be turned into a proverb. The lead judge calls the defendant forward. He tells the story, not about the case, but about a man long ago who argued over a sheep that turned out to be a particularly hairy dog. The point, no one quite knows, but everyone laughs. And the defendant bows, grinning through it. It's public, it's performative, and it works. Even the children start whispering variations of the tale as they scatter. In a week, you'll hear a joke in the market about cow thieves with goat hearts, and you'll know exactly where it came from. You remain seated, watching. The cow is led away slowly, her tail swishing, her hooves steady. A child sings softly beside her nonsense syllables, half lullaby, half legal recap. And then something beautiful happens. The Dabtara, who has remained silent since the verdict, stands. He begins reciting a closing prayer. It weaves scripture, soil, animal, and air. It thanks the sky for patience, the earth for memory, and the cow for not kicking anyone. It's oddly moving, especially when the final line drops. Let our quarrels pass like hoofprints in rain, soft, deep, and soon forgotten. There's a long pause afterward. Even the birds go quiet. This is the part where you're supposed to reflect. Not on law or livestock, but on people. On the sheer absurdity of how humans argue so theatrically, so ritually, so predictably, and how we always find a way to make peace feel like victory even when no one truly wins. You stand, stretch, and realize that somehow against all odds you feel at peace. Not because the cow was returned or justice was served, but because you just witnessed something timeless. A courtroom drama where respect, humor, tradition, and community kept the world spinning slowly, yes, but with purpose. Behind you, someone plays a krar, a five-stringed lyre, gently. The notes flutter like wings in dust. You begin the slow walk back to your hut, your legs stiff, your mind soft. The sun dips lower, shadows stretch. The cow, long gone now, may forget all of this. But you'll remember the eyelash counting, the dung analysis, the poetic insults, the rogue goat. You'll remember the day a cow stood trial and a village stayed whole. Your feet press into the cooling earth as you step away from the court, but sleep still resists. You linger curious. The cow has gone home. The feather has spoken, but the village hasn't finished processing what just happened. You find yourself drifting toward a group of elders seated around a clay brazier, flickering with faint embers. A pot of spiced lentils simmers not for ceremony now, but for digestion. This is the after-court ritual known unofficially as the Circle of the Grumble. Here, every detail of the trial is reviewed, dissected, laughed at, doubted, rephrased, and turned into legend before your very eyes. One man mimics the Dabtara, dramatically counting his own eyelashes. Another claims the cow blinked in Morse code. She said, "I belong to no one." He shouts, waving his arms, nearly tipping the lentil pot. Laughter bubbles up like spring water. Then, someone suggests an alternate theory. What if the cow was bribed? Gasps. A scandal. Joking, probably. But someone does point out that the cow seemed suspiciously full all morning. You sip warm tala, a mild local barley brew passed around in a carved gourd. It tastes earthy, slightly sour with the faintest fizz of fermentation. You're told it helps settle courtroom nerves, or invites more arguments, depends on the batch. From across the circle, a boy retells the tale in exaggerated tones, turning the hoofprint analysis into a treasure hunt, the goat interruption into an omen from the mountain gods. The adults don't correct him. This is how stories grow legs. How a mundane dispute becomes something shared, something performed, then passed on in song and side-eye. Speaking of which, someone actually starts singing. Yes, a cow dispute ballad. It begins slowly, with a rhythm that sounds like plodding hooves on dry soil. The lyrics are improvised, of course. "Oh, diddy cow of wandering, will you left your post, you grazed the hill, and now you're home the tale is told, but your poop made justice very bold." Not exactly Homeric poetry, but the crowd loves it. A pot-bellied man adds a verse about the rogue goat rhyming bribe with village scribe in a way that absolutely doesn't work. But it doesn't matter. They're howling with laughter. You notice the judges sitting apart, now silent again, their duties behind them. One chews on a twig, slowly watching the festivities with something like contentment. Or maybe exhaustion. Hard to tell from this distance. But something else is happening here, something that's not about cows or courts or even tradition. It's collective therapy. Everyone who sat through that trial, who chewed chat and watched men accuse each other with metaphors about soil and sun, is now releasing it all. Through laughter, through music, through mockery, through warmth. There's no bitterness, no lingering resentment. The defendant is sitting 2 seats away from the accuser now, and both are laughing over the same joke involving dung footprints and love letters. It's not forgiveness, it's just absorption. The way the earth absorbs rain and the village absorbs disputes. You wonder how many of these arguments have played out before under this same tree on this same patch of cracked earth. How many more will? You glance toward the cow's path home. Nothing stirs. Just then, someone near you whispers, "She'll be back next week, you'll see." "Why, you ask?" He grins. "Because her calf is probably on the other guy's farm." The entire circle explodes into laughter. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. And just like that, a new plotline is born. You stretch out, lie back in the grass, and watch the sky fade into deep cobalt. No stars yet. Just the soft blur of clouds and smoke and maybe incense if someone remembered to light it. The voices begin to fade, but not the warmth. And you realize as the fire dims and the laughter softens into sleepy murmurs that the cow was never the point. She was the anchor, the excuse. The village needed to gather to breathe, to chew, to judge, to joke. And now, having done that, they are whole again. And you are full of lentils, warmth, and too many metaphors to keep straight. But somehow it all makes sense. The grass beneath your back is dry and prickly, but not unpleasant. It smells faintly of old smoke and sun-baked straw, honest scents. You lie there letting the conversation hum around you like bees in the distance. No one's arguing anymore. The embers in the brazier are whispering. Their last the lentil pot has gone quiet, and somewhere nearby a rooster has decided he's a night owl now. And yet, no one leaves. Because in this village, as in many old ones, there's one more piece to every conflict, the communal wind-down. You hear it in the way the elders speak now. Softer, less amused, more reflective. It's the part where people remember things they didn't mean to say, or wish they had. It's where truth leaks out between long silences. The accuser finally admits he only noticed the cow was missing because his cousin mentioned it. "I wouldn't have cared," he mutters. Until he said it like that. The defendant nods. He stirs pots. Everyone knows. They say no more. But that's enough. Conflict in truth rarely starts with cattle. It starts with cousins, with glances, with things unsaid. And courts, despite the fanfare, are just ceremonies for stitching the tear without saying there was a tear to begin with. One of the old men pulls out a pouch of dried tobacco leaves. He rolls a thin paper stick and lights it from a twig poked into the embers. He doesn't smoke so much as sip the smoke like tea. He doesn't speak either. He just watches the smoke rise, curl vanish. Someone shifts beside you. A girl, perhaps 10 or 11, lies down a few paces away, arms crossed under her head. She's humming the cow song from earlier Dee Dee Cow of Wandering Will, but she's made up a new verse. Something about teff pancakes and hoof prints shaped like hearts. It's adorable and slightly concerning. More kids arrive. Some lie down. Others curl into blankets. One boy uses a folded tunic as a pillow face, half covered in dust, snoring before his head hits the ground. A mother somewhere behind you clicks her tongue once. Just once. That's all it takes. Her son sits up, wraps a cloth over his shoulders, and pretends to be alert. He is not. And then out of nowhere, an elder begins to speak again. Not about the cow, about another case. Do you remember the sheep that refuse to follow anyone, he asks. Groans. Yes, someone replies. It followed a pot of stew once. That's how we caught it. Laughter again, but softer this time. Then he adds, that stew had no salt, but still it worked. You think that might be a metaphor for what you're not sure, but it feels meaningful. And then another story is told, and another, each one smaller than the last, about broken jugs, about an escaped chicken, about a man who tripped over his own blessing stick and blamed a cat that didn't exist. None of it matters. All of it matters. Because it's in these useless little stories that people slowly remember who they are. Not as fighters, not as owners, but as neighbors, story sharers, co-sufferers of goats. And slowly, even the voices fade. Someone coughs. Someone adjusts their wrap. But no one really speaks anymore. They just sit, or lie down, or lean, and let the quiet finish what the trial began. You close your eyes, not to sleep, not yet, just to listen better. There's a lullaby in the wind now. Not sung, but built from the hush of night animals, the twitch of cooling leaves, and the leftover rhythm of walking feet. The cow is long gone. The case is closed. But here under the sycamore that served as courtroom, temple, and tavern, the village sleeps without locks. Because trust, though, Denid has been rehearsed back into shape, one eyelash at a time. At some point, the stars arrive. You don't remember when exactly, they just appear. As if they've been watching the whole time but only now decided to switch on their glow. You tilt your head back. The sky is clean. Clear. Not a cloud in sight, just layers of pinprick light quietly arguing about who gets to shine brightest. You blink, then blink again. The cow's trial feels like days ago now, but the campfire hasn't gone out yet. Not completely. It glows gently, feeding on its last embers like a slow dream. Someone stokes it just once with a twig. The flame flinches, then settles again. No one speaks. The trial's weight has lifted, but its rhythm still hangs in the air. You hear soft breathing, snoring, a rustle of cloth, the occasional sleepy grunt of a goat possibly dreaming of rebellion. And then, of course, someone begins speaking again. Quietly. Not to argue, but to remember. An old woman, barely visible in the dim light, recounts a tale about a calf that once led its blind owner through a dust storm. The calf knew the road better than the man, she says. She swears by it. The calf had a soul, and that soul was loyal. Her voice trembles, but not from age, from belief. It reminds everyone that for many in these highlands, animals aren't just assets, they're woven into the spiritual weave of daily life. Cows are sacred not because they're cows, but because they share your breath, your field, your morning routine. They know your rhythms. They know your flaws, which is why accusing someone of stealing one is not a small insult. It's an attack on your connection to the land itself. Someone asks if the cow will return again tomorrow. Someone else answers, only if her spirit isn't satisfied yet. The cow as oracle theory is back in play. No one challenges it. Historians still debate whether medieval Ethiopian villagers genuinely believed in animal spirits deciding ownership. Some argue it was poetic metaphor. Others claim it was just rural pragmatism wrapped in myth. But here, under this sky, no one is debating anything. They're just remembering. You hear another story, this one from a man who once chased a donkey for 3 days only to discover it wasn't his. Same color, same lazy eye, he says, but it didn't hate my singing. That's how I knew. You laugh quietly. So does everyone else. Even the sleeping boy stirs smirks in his half-dream. And just like that, the conversation shifts again. From donkeys to songs, from songs to weddings, from weddings to ancestors. It becomes a braid of memory so slow and soft you can't tell where one thread ends and another begins. One of the elders hums an old verse, a lullaby maybe, or a prayer. Grass grows slow and slower still where peace walks past the morning hill. Cows remember, so do we. Quiet night, quiet tree. A breeze tiptoes through the branches above. Leaves shiver once, then still. Even the goat is quiet now. Someone tosses the last of the lentils to the fire. It crackles gently as if chewing. The stars overhead blink without pattern. You start trying to name them. Fail. Try again. Give up. You find yourself thinking about the cow's hooves. How sure they seemed. How little she cared for the theater around her. How she simply waited, walked, and flicked her tail when things got too loud. There's a lesson in that. Probably. But you're too comfortable to decode it. Your eyes drift closed again. Someone whispers something about how the moon looks like an old clay pot tonight. You don't respond. But you agree. It does. And somewhere in your thoughts, soft and steady as a heartbeat, you hear the cow's name once more, Didi. You wonder if she's sleeping, or if in her own quiet way she's watching. Morning comes quietly, not with roosters, not with drums, not even with yawns. Just light, pale and slow and deliberate. It seeps in from the east like a secret gently rolling across the dusty ground, catching on the curve of an old pot, climbing the thatch roofs like a barefoot thief. You're still lying beneath the sycamore limbs tucked in like a content cat. Around you people stir, but no one rises. Not really. Rising is too bold. This kind of morning demands sliding into wakefulness. A limb twitches, a shawl is adjusted. Someone coughs once, then goes perfectly still again as if unsure whether being awake is worth it. The cow is nowhere to be seen, but her presence remains like a footprint in soft soil. You can almost hear her hooves, almost smell the sweet tang of crushed grass underfoot. You imagine her chewing utterly unconcerned already halfway through a fresh stalk of teff, while the humans who fought over her are still tangled in their dreams. One of the elders sits up, rubs his eyes. Then in a gravelly voice says, "Well, did she say thank you?" Laughter, soft, delayed but genuine. Another man replies, "She'll send a letter. Once she learns to hold a pen." The morning has begun. You rise slowly. The grass has left patterned impressions on your arms. Your back aches in a good way, like it's been retuned by the earth. Someone offers you a piece of dried injera wrapped around spiced lentils. It's breakfast. Or maybe just not dinner anymore. The fire has burned out. Only a faint column of smoke remains curling lazily into the sky like a forgotten thought. And now the real magic begins, not the court, not the verdict, not even the storytelling. No. The real enchantment of village justice is the retelling. Because today, the trial you witnessed will be repeated 100 times by 100 mouths, and not a single version will match another. You pass two children acting out the scene. One is the cow crawling on hands and knees. The other is the judge wielding a wooden spoon as a gavel. The cow child dramatically collapses into the dust and declares, "I belong to no one," before pretending to fall asleep. You overhear two women at the well debating whether the goat that interrupted was actually sent by the ancestors. "You saw how it walked," one says. "That wasn't a normal goat walk." You pass the market stall where the spice vendor is already telling the tale with flourishes you know didn't happen. In his version, the cow spoke twice and requested salt. And at every doorway, at every pot station, over every shared bowl, the story evolves. Each telling trims facts and fattens flair. Historians still argue whether this oral tradition distorted the truth or preserved it. The answer, as always, is both. What matters isn't the details, it's that the memory survives. And so as the day unfolds, the village pulses with low-energy retellings, debates, laughter, and silence. The defendant. He's working already, chopping firewood with the expression of a man who's been defeated and yet somehow won. His children play nearby, giggling as they pretend to brand an imaginary goat. The accuser. He's walking his reclaimed cow slowly through the pasture, not to keep her tethered, but to let her graze near her old path. Some say it's to help her remember. Others say he just wants people to see he's won. But you're just wandering now, through alleyways shaded by drying gourds, past huts patched with careful love, past children playing chord and elders replaying the wisdom of eyelash counting. You're not a stranger anymore, because witnessing justice here makes you part of its fabric. You helped listen, and that's half the law already. Later, someone invites you to stay another night. There's a wedding tomorrow, or a burial, or both. It's unclear. You nod, smile. You might not. But either way, you know this. You'll remember the cow, not her name, not the verdict, but the way she stood utterly unmoved while humans did what humans do: accuse, forgive, interpret, laugh, and then somehow sleep. You find yourself drawn back to the sycamore tree, not because there's anything to see, but because absence here is its own kind of presence. The circle has been swept clean. Mats rolled, feather gone. No fire now, just dry earth scattered with the memory of verdicts. Still you sit, and as you sit, a thin boy passes by carrying a basket of dung on his head. Dried, collected, carefully curated. It's not waste here, it's fuel. The very stuff that powered the fire, where coffee boiled, where flatbread crisped, where arguments softened into song. He doesn't even notice you. He's too busy whistling a tune, a sloppy version of the cow ballad from yesterday. But you catch the refrain. She chose the one with steady feet. So now even the song has picked a side. That's how it begins, the slow crystallization of truth through retelling. Each version chips away unnecessary detail until only the clean bones of myth remain. In a week, no one will remember the branding marks, but they'll remember the feather, the goat, the thunderous silence before the verdict. And in a month, they'll say the cow kicked over the coffee pot and sent the truth flying. You smile, because that's the beauty of these stories, they fail upwards. Every inaccuracy adds flavor. Every exaggeration binds memory to emotion. This is not about archives, it's about echoes. Two elders walk by debating the case again. Not its outcome, but its timing. Too long, one grumbles. Too short, the other replies. They didn't even ask the wind. You don't ask what that means, you're learning. Further down the path, you spot a child holding a twig in both hands, balancing it carefully, like a ceremonial staff. He's reenacting the final judgment. His voice wavers with importance. Let the feather float to the soul she chooses. He tosses it. It lands in a goat's ear. The goat sprints off in panic. Case closed. You keep walking, past courtyards where garlic hangs from door frames, past walls painted with faded birds and suns, past gossip in progress. You hear someone claim the cow was possessed. Someone else says she gave milk in the shape of the judge's face. It doesn't matter, because what matters is ritual continuity. That rhythm you've now memorized without trying. Dispute, gathering, performance, judgment, laughter, silence, sleep. Each step a filter straining emotion through tradition until only calm remains. And it's not just for cows. You pass a woman measuring millet by hand, humming a morning song. Her daughter was denied a marriage proposal last week, but no one's yelling. There'll be a gathering soon, a discussion, a phrase wrapped in wax and gold, a verdict, then injera and song. Because justice here isn't about speed, it's about containment, a system for holding what might otherwise shatter. You pass the pasture, and there she is, the cow, Dee, standing under a crooked fig tree, flicking her tail like punctuation. You stop. She looks at you, then lowers her head to chew. You offer a hand. She ignores it. Naturally, you laugh out loud this time. She is not here for you, or your amusement, or the story. She is just a cow, doing cow things, surrounded by humans clinging to meaning like ants to sugar. But still you thank her, quietly, for being the anchor of a ritual older than memory. for allowing herself to be argued over. Eyelash counted, praised, blamed, sung about, for being the center of gravity in a world where everything else spins too fast. A breeze stirs, soft, cool. A woman walks by and says, "Careful, that cow knows secrets." You nod. She definitely does, but she's not sharing today. Afternoon settles in like a cat curling on warm stones, slow drowsy, full of ownership. The wind has gone quiet again. No more songs, no more retellings for now. Just that particular kind of stillness only small villages know, where nothing is happening but everything is resting. You sit outside a shaded hut sipping a second cup of lukewarm buna. The flavor is muted now, less smoke, more dust, but it matches the pace of things. Someone sweeping dust in slow circles that just settle back into place. Someone else is mending a gourd with string. The world is being maintained by almost doing nothing. And here comes another story, because of course it never really ends. An elder plops down beside you. He has the look of a man who spent most of his life sitting down very dramatically. He adjusts his shama, clears his throat, and says, "This reminds me of the donkey who wouldn't lie." You blink, wouldn't lie. He nods. Every time someone accused her of theft, she sat down. But only if it was true. A long pause. She sat a lot. You're not sure if it's a fable or actual testimony, but you nod solemnly. That's the right response. You've learned that now. He chuckles. That cow Didi. She reminds me of that donkey. You ask why. He smiles. Because she stood tall, even when everyone else bowed under their words. You think on that for a moment, then ask, but she still got taken home. Did she win? He leans closer and whispers, she went where she wanted. The rest was theater. He leans back, folds his arms, and dozes off in under 10 seconds. Just like that. And now you're alone with that thought. The rest was theater. It rings in your mind as you walk again, this time toward the communal threshing ground. A wide open field of compacted dust and scattered stalks where oxen are sometimes walked in slow circles to separate grain from chaff. No oxen today, just a few children playing court again. This time one of them is the cow. But now the cow is being judged for stealing grain. You watch as the mini judge declares, "We will examine her tail for flour." The others nod sagely. One even kneels to inspect it. Then they all collapse in laughter. It's infectious. They've taken what they saw and remixed it, folding humor into structure. You realize that this kind of play is how justice survives. Not through scrolls or stone tablets, but through imitation and mischief. Meanwhile, a group of older boys sketch cow prints in the dirt with sticks. They're reenacting the hoofprint segment complete, with fake measuring tools, a spoon, a sandal, a half-eaten mango rind. You move past them smiling. The courtyard near the church smells like fresh dough now. Someone is baking flatbread. You can hear it crackle. You remember the debate about whether bread gifted to judges was hospitality or bribery. Historians still argue. You now lean toward yes. You reach a small stream, thin, tired, barely a trickle. But even here you hear the echoes. A woman bathing her baby is singing. A soft hum. You recognize the tune. It's the verdict song. Slowed down, stripped of its cheekiness, turned into something gentle. She walks where hearts are steady. She sleeps where soil is kind. The cow remembers silence. The goat forgets his mind. And that's when it hits you. The trial didn't just resolve a dispute. It reset the rhythm of the village. People are moving slower, laughing easier, speaking softer. Because something was torn and then mended. Carefully, absurdly, beautifully. You sit on a stone, close your eyes, and breathe in. You don't smell justice. You smell bread. You don't hear arguments. You hear children. You don't feel tension. You feel dust on your toes and peace in your spine. And far away, just barely, you think you hear a moo. Or maybe it's the wind remembering something. Same thing, really. By now, you've stopped asking questions. Not because you found all the answers, but because the questions have been replaced by rhythm. Things happen here not in straight lines, but in circles. like walking a cow around a field to thresh grain or passing a coffee cup 3 times before it's empty, or resolving a court case that begins and ends in silence. So when the drums start beating from the northern edge of the village, you don't rush to investigate. You just follow the sound soft-footed like everyone else. The beat is gentle, steady, measured. It's not for dancing, not for mourning. It's announcement rhythm. The kind that says something is about to be said slowly, ceremonially, and with more poetry than necessary. At the source, a storyteller stands. He's not part of the court. Not a judge, not a dabtara, not even related to the case. But he's the mouthpiece of memory. It's his job to take what happened yesterday and shape it into something worthy of tomorrow. He wears no special robe, just a sun-bleached tunic and a grin like he knows secrets. A small crowd gathers, sitting cross-legged in the dirt. Children lean forward, elders sit back ready to judge his phrasing. And then he begins. There was a cow fat with opinion and 2 men dry with pride. Already the crowd is hooked. You've heard most of the details already, but not like this, not with this much flair, not with this much bending of the truth in the name of a better rhythm. He describes the hoofprint inspection like a royal parade. The rogue goat. Now officially a messenger of the spirits here to challenge the false prophet of Tef. The feather enchanted by a weaver who once made rugs for thunder. The verdict declared with a bolt of lightning that hit a single stalk of millet. None of it is true. All of it is correct. That's how it works here. Truth isn't a ledger. It's a weaving away of wrapping memory around feelings so tightly that neither escapes. Even the children play along. One pipes up. Tell them about the cow's eyebrow twitch. The storyteller nods. Ah yes, that twitch proof of guilt or innocence depending on the angle of the moon. Everyone roars. And then just as the laughter begins to crest, he stops. Dead silence. Then softly, and what of us who speak and judge and watch and claim? What do we leave in the field? When the cow walks home again, it's not a joke. It's not a punchline. It's a mirror. The crowd is quiet now. Someone coughs. A baby babbles in the background. Then an elder claps once sharp and final. The session is done. The story has entered the archive of memory. Not written down, but sealed in breath and heartbeat and repetition. Later that night, as the sky softens again, you find yourself at the edge of the village, alone. Or maybe just quietly accompanied by every retelling still echoing around you. And as you stare into the brush beyond the pasture, you see a shape. The cow. She stands at the edge of the paddock, framed by starlight, watching you, not moving, not judging, just present. She snorts once, flicks her tail, and turns away, back into the brush, back into her rhythm. And you realize there was never a verdict. Not really, just a ritual, a braid, a shared breath. And now you are part of it. You've been counted. Not as judge, not as witness, but as listener. The last light of day folds itself behind the hills like a worn shawl slipping from an old woman's shoulders. The wind returns, not strong, not cold, just enough to lift a corner of dust and carry it softly across the path like a whispered secret between friends. You're sitting again under the sycamore tree, the same spot where the court began. Where the feather trembled, where justice blinked behind a cow's indifferent gaze. Now, there's no crowd, no judges, no dabtara or goat or flatbread diplomacy, just you, and silence, and the hush of everything after. The tree creaks gently overhead, its bark whispering its own kind of verdict to the sky. The leaves barely rustle, but they do, just enough to remind you that this place is still breathing, still watching. You close your eyes, and in that quiet, something happens. Your mind begins stitching it all together. The pacing, the rituals, the comedy, the poetry, the dung inspection, the eyelash ceremony, the song sung with too much drama and not enough rhythm. It all blends. And you realize now what the village already knows. The trial was never about the cow. It was about belonging. Who belongs where? To whom? With what? And under what tree? And not just the cow, everyone. Every man who argued, every woman who hummed, every child who played judge with a spoon, every rooster that crowed out of turn, Every elder who counted the pauses between accusations more carefully than the words themselves. Justice here doesn't live on paper. It breeds through ritual repetition, through shared remembering, through allowing every voice, yes, even a goat's, to crash the silence and have its say. And now that you've sat through it, tasted the slow logic of a world where even disagreement must be poetic, something inside you has softened. You find yourself mimicking the rhythms now, waiting before you speak, choosing metaphors instead of blame. Even your thoughts feel slower, more chewable. You glance up once more. No stars yet, just a velvet blue sky stretching without edge. A woman walks past carrying firewood. She nods. You nod back. No words exchanged, but 100 things said. And as you lay back on the earth, cool, cracked, familiar, you hear the last murmurs of the village folding itself into sleep. No closing bells, no gongs, no judges packing scrolls. Just soft footsteps, slow breaths, a lullaby barely sung. The goat coughs once, almost politely. The air grows still. And you who came expecting answers leave instead with rhythm. One you'll carry, one you won't explain, because no one else would believe that a cow taught you how to listen, or that justice can be whispered, or that peace can be negotiated through song, silence, and fermented leaf. But it can. It did. And now, it's time to drift. So now, dear listener, you've traveled the full circle through fields of dust and metaphors, across dung-strewn evidence and double-spoken riddles, all the way to a fire that burned just long enough to stitch a village back together. Your eyes are heavier now, your breath slower. You feel the earth beneath you, not as a surface, but as a cradle. The cow is long gone. The stories are beginning to shift, soften, melt into legend. But your body remembers the cadence. Your heartbeat echoes the pace of that feather falling. Your mind hums with the lull of that courtroom-turned lullaby. Let it all settle now. Let the soil take your tension. Let the wind tuck in your thoughts. Let the stillness soothe every question you forgot you were holding. There's no need to recall every metaphor or name every elder. They're already fading. That's how memory blesses you, by choosing what to keep. What remains? The rhythm, the hush, the pause between breaths where everything makes sense and nothing needs to. And as your eyes close and your limbs grow quiet, know this: you've been part of a trial that ends not with a gavel, but with a whisper. And here, in this place beneath a tree that once held the weight of judgment, you are exactly where you need to be. Still, soft, and finally, asleep.